tonight. Well, thank you so much for coming out today. We really appreciate having you here and supporting these artists and public art. My name is Kayla Padilla. I'm a reporter and I'm a reporter here at Texas Public Radio and a producer on our show, The Source. And I just really wanted to thank the San Antonio River Foundation. This evening wouldn't be possible without them. Can we give a round of applause to them? So this is a discussion on the public art that you can see up there that is located in the San Pedro Creek Culture Park. And before we officially start, I just wanted to say that this is, like we always say on The Source, this is a community conversation. And so we really do want to hear from you. And there's a microphone right there where you can come up at any point throughout the conversation to ask your question. So we'll kind of be talking to each of these artists. And if you have a question at any point, please do not feel shy about coming forward. And we'll weave you into the conversation, essentially. But if these right here are our 5 artists, can we give them a round of applause? So right here we have Leticia Huerta. She's an artist that utilizes painting, printmaking, sculpture, photography, and ceramics to explore ideas of personal struggle. The majority of her work in the last few decades has actually been public art. And Leticia's tile art at San Pedro Creek Culture Park is inspired by 4 native wildflowers of Texas. And so Leticia, I'm so happy to have you here today. And secondly, we have Rikkianne Van Kirk. And Rikki is an artist and illustrator with a background in theater. Her work emphasizes the power of the line in an effort to relay posture and emotion. And Van Kirk collaborated with the San Antonio River Authority to develop a canopy design that features herons and other wildlife found along the creek. And you can see hers right there. It's the second one. And Rikki, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to have you. And Diana Kersey is a visual artist working exclusively with clay. Her work has become identifiable due to the muscular qualities of the material that is enhanced with her colorful, translucent glazes. Diana, thanks for being here. And next to Diana, we have Cade Bradshaw. He has completed dozens of projects in the US and abroad. His work is heavily influenced by atmospheric science and biology. It is driven by themes of perception and the natural world. Cade and his partner, Stuart Allen, are principals of bridge projects and are the creators of Creek Lines, situated in the Plaza de Fundación. And Cade, thanks for being here. And finally, I'm sorry this is so long, but finally, we have Elizabeth Carrington, and she's an artist specializing in public and environmental art, graphic design, fine art, and textile design. And with the support of the San Pedro Creek Culture Park, with the San Antonio River Foundation, she worked to create what you can see right there on the top left, those papel picado-inspired metal frames. And Elizabeth, thanks for being here. Thank you. So can I just say, it's really impressive how each of you found a way to integrate local wildlife and nature, whether it be flowers or the creek itself or animals. And so, Cade, for your piece, Creek Lines, you thought I was going to go in order, right?
Keep us loose.
Well, for your piece, so your piece is right there, and it was in collab with your partner, Stuart Allen. And so, for your piece, the stainless steel canopy that we can see right there, it's held up by 30 curved poles. Can you explain what those 30 poles represent?
Yeah, so Stuart and I were thinking of this piece as sort of starting with the line of San Pedro Creek. And so those poles, if you are the shape of the creek from above, if you sliced it into 5 segments. And so you've got the shape of the creek supporting this reflective canopy that kind of represents the topography of our watershed, of all that land that feeds the creek when it rains.
And so, Cade, growing up, you actually wanted to be a wildlife biologist and you studied ecology, but then you realized how much time ecologists spend doing data and writing, and you decided that never mind.
It's true, yeah.
And so how does creating art that's influenced and inspired by atmospheric science and biology fulfill that same purpose of wanting to be an ecologist?
I think the foundation is about being curious about what you're looking at and trying to find a way to process that and understand it. And so whether that is quantitatively through measurement of whatever it is, the number of crickets in this field or the percentage of big blue stem in this plot, right? Or is it about the way that those grasses move? Or is it the way that you feel when you look at the color of the sky at the end of the day? It's two different ways to process the same set of information.
And so what I really appreciated when I was learning more about this structure is that at the end of the poles right there, we can't see it in this picture, but there's these little plaques, and each plaque represents a historical event that happened throughout the decades from 1719 to 2019. So that's 300 years of San Antonio modern history. And so what are some of the events that you had no idea were part of San Antonio's history as you were putting up these little plaques?
So many. I'm not by nature a history buff, but I became a lot more well-versed in the city's history on this. Stuart and I both. And what were some of the surprises? The Spurs are on there, all the 5 championships from the 90s to today. There's important markers, Brown versus Board of Education, the first Juneteenth when the slaves were freed in Texas. What else? There's a really interesting one about all the cattle that were raised in San Antonio going to other parts of the world and being involved in like international wars the world over. That was really fascinating. There's a lot there. There's so many events that didn't even make it onto the plaques, right? Because we could only choose one per decade, or we set that limit ourselves, obviously. But
yeah. So is it you and your partner Stuart that were putting those together, and who did you collaborate with?
We collaborated with a couple historians and with some staff with the River Authority that kind of helped us to understand, like, this is how you structure a plaque, right? Because it has to stand the test of time forever, and that language has to be really specific and really precise. And so history is a process of storytelling, and it's interpretive to some degree. And so to write down this is what happened is much more complicated when you actually sit down to do it than one might imagine.
So even the canopy itself and the lines running through it, that big line right there, that represents the creek. And so, but it also it serves another purpose. It allows for, when it rains, it allows the rain to fall down so that way it doesn't get caught up there. So is that you doing ecology? Is that ecology?
It is about mimicking the natural world in like a graceful way and trying to activate that space in times when people maybe don't want to be down there, right? And there's a big desire to create shade on the creek, right, of course, and so the canopy does that. But there's also shelter during a rain event and this really kind of magical moment like, oh, I don't want to go outside and get wet, like it's raining now. But if you're there and there's all this like wall of water cascading down on you in the shape of the creek, it's just fun, you know?
Well, when people go, for people who now want to visit, when people go under the canopy and they look up, we kind of see there's like a reflective mirror type of deal going on. So when you look up, what do you see?
You see a lot of things. Depending on where you're standing, the canopy is faceted, and so the angle is weird. You can look up and you can actually see the ripples of water on the creek. You can see yourself or multiple instances of yourself in some cases. You can see plants. You can see the apartment buildings nearby, the sunset, all sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do a cartwheel, but I think it'd be really cool to do a cartwheel like under it and film it and get the visual of that.
Yeah.
And Well, I have a question for the audience now. Have any of you guys seen this piece of art live? And if you have, would you like to share your experience? Oh, yeah, everyone put their hand down.
I love it. The placards, I wish we could go online to read the placards, because it's hard to read when you're standing there.
Sure. Well, we should put them up.
Yeah, look at that.
The question was if we can put the placards online for folks to read them. Yeah. Well,
Where can we find that?
it's at the Plaza de Fundación, which is at the very northern reach of the San Pedro Creek Culture Park. It is close to the Christopher Columbus Society building up there. Yeah. In the former Fox Tech High School. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's the still Fox Tech High School.
Still Fox Tech High School.
Okay, perfect. So does anyone else want to share before I go on? Anyone want to share their experience or have any questions as they plan? Yes, go ahead.
Are all the pillars, 30 whatever pillars, are they the same shape? Each one?
The 30 pillars are different shapes. There are 5 profiles repeated 6 times. And so if you look at it from one angle, all those profiles resolve to where you can see each of them distinctly. But as you spin around it, they get complicated, just like the ripples of water on the surface. So.
Can you talk about the design on the ground? Because there's a design on the ground as well.
Yeah, the design on the question is about the design on the ground. It mirrors the shape of the canopy, so it's a rectangle, and there is a inlaid piece of stainless steel that is also the shape of the creek, and so water would fall down from above onto that line, and then there's a colorful kind of teal, blue, and white floor down there as well that gives it a nice pop of color.
Yes, sir.
Where is Stuart and what was his role in the collaboration?
Stuart had a pre-scheduled vacation for today, so he's working remotely, and I get to represent us. Stuart and I worked collaboratively on this piece. You know, we don't put percentages on it, but his name is all over this piece, and his influence is everywhere. So, you know, we started with the line and talked about how these undulating poles would overlap, and then we kind of came to the idea that there needed to be shade, and so we talked about what would a shade canopy look like, what would something else look like. So we do a lot of bouncing ideas back and forth and riffing on those ideas, and so.
Next I want to go on to Diana. I want to talk about your sculpture now, the crawfish, and we can see it right up there on the far top right. So it's intended to be sort of a place marker and a trailhead for El Paso Street, and the process for selecting, like the actual concept of the crawfish design, it was actually very community guided. And so you asked people to tell you stories about their memories with the San Pedro Creek. So what did you hear from people, not just in regards to crawfish, but just generally, what were you hearing?
I heard a lot of stories of people who had just grown up around the creek and played in the creek, and it's just a part of a lot of neighborhoods, you know, life experience. And so that was a lot of fun. But most people's memories of the creek were San Pedro Park and the springs. And, you know, years ago, the springs really bubbled up in that area of all the picnic tables and bridges and things. And people had very fond memories of playing with crayfish and just picking them up and playing with them as kids. And I heard that story probably like 10, 15 times during the Creek Fest. And so that sort of just started to develop into a theme that I thought, well, that'd be a fun thing to talk about.
So what about this animal makes for an excellent trailhead?
Well, there is a saying in art, in sculpture particularly, like, make it good. And if you can't make it good, make it big. And if you can't make it big, make it red. And so we kind of hit the trifecta on that. I hope the trifecta, at least 2 of those things. And so a big red sculpture gets people's attention, and becomes a good placemaker because you can always say that's where we should meet, and people will know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Yes, red and big. So what was the process behind creating this sculpture? And I believe you used an extruder, is that right?
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know what an extruder is. So what is that and how did you use it?
When you were a kid, did you ever play Play-Doh?
Yes.
Okay, and did you get that machine that you could like push down and
Yes.
squirt something out?
Okay, I know what an extruder is.
So I have
Sorry.
I have like a, I don't know, $15,000 extruder now. And
Oh, wow.
it's my best toy I've ever had in my life. I made a special die that extrudes it out a strip that's 2 inches thick and hollow. So there's little voids in it. And so the brilliant thing of a hollow extruded brick is I can shape it against a foam armature that I've already kind of pre-shaped and build up my 3-dimensional figure double-walled. And then I can cut it into kind of puzzle-like pieces like I do for my murals, and then let it dry, fire it, and then install it kind of like tile, like a 3-dimensional puzzle. And what changes is a single wall of clay versus a double wall is in the kiln, it doesn't warp at all. And so things don't change and move and that. And so I'm like just having a great time. This is a new process. I think I'm the only one in the country doing anything like this. And so, yeah, so I think it's really opened up the ability to work in 3 dimensions on a large scale, but not need massive equipment and massive kilns and all that type.
Yeah, wow, that's impressive. And so what did you learn about gravity when making this sculpture?
So I've been working in clay for like 20 years now, and so occasionally I think I can just defy physics because I'm a master in clay, and yet gravity was not my friend in this project, in the making or in the installation. So we just had to slow down and wait a lot longer and do like a layer, let it set up with our thin set mortars, and then come back the next day and do it. And so it was just a much slower process with that cantilevered body of the crawfish. Once we got up to the upper parts, it was a little more easy. But I'm trying to build with gravity in the future instead of against it so much.
Can you tell us again the dimensions of it and how?
Oh, I don't know. I think
it was 36 by.
There's a picture of me we got on of me straddling it like a horse, and so it's like bigger than me. It's like felt very comfortable as something I could ride around. So.
Well, why was it important to have that community input? Why not just take a guess on what people in San Antonio would like?
You know, that's one of the reasons I really love public art, is I love that it is for the community. You know, whenever I get a project, my favorite way of going about a project is to hear from people who are going to interact with it. And, you know, this is going to be a part of their lives, and I want to make something that they appreciate and like. So I want to hear from the community and know what it is that they want out of an artwork. And then it's my job as an artist to respond to that.
Yeah, and have you guys seen Diana's sculpture? Any of you? Do you guys want to come up to the mic and share your experience, or even share your memories with the San Pedro Creek Culture Park growing up?
All right, we
So
got
brave.
someone to come.
Can you just tell us your name and?
Oh, my name is Mitzi, and I am obsessed with the San Pedro Creek Culture Park, especially the new part. I've gone multiple times, and I've taken people down there and said, look at this, look at this, look at this. I just wanted to say I appreciate that there's now a parking lot at El Paso Street where I can park my car and enjoy all of the art without paying. So thank you for that.
It's important.
And I'm all your fan. Definitely.
Yeah, don't you stalk me on Instagram?
I do.
Yes.
I comment on your Instagram all the time. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I met you at the Garden Volunteers of South Texas, where you taught us how to make ollas. And, okay, I'm not a stalker, but I just drove by your house. Because you told us to go to the little garden where you put the ollas, and I did that. And then I told my friend about it. She lives in the same neighborhood, like 2 blocks away. She said, oh, that's her house right there. And I just dropped my friend off, and on the way here, I went by your house. It's so cute.
You're welcome to knock on the door anytime.
My name's Gary Houston. I just wanted to offer a little random community input, and that is something that Diana might already realize, and that's that one of the major streets in this part of downtown is Cameron Street, which most of us refer to as Cameron Street, but that actually refers to the crustacean that you created there, and it's part of the story of the creek and your work.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for that. Anyone else that has driven by Diana's house and wants to comment?
Well, one of the things I want to say about Instagram and being local artists is it is so fun to be able to show work and show the process of it being built and get input, and everybody's kind of celebrating with me when things go well. So I think that's a real enjoyable part of being an artist here.
What is your Instagram?
Diana.Kersey.
Okay, I'll try to remember. Can I follow you?
And then come to my house. We'll be
Okay,
up for beer.
perfect. Yeah, okay. We're all going home with you. Okay. Now let's keep it safe. So a lot of these works are focused on the native species and themes of San Antonio and the creek. And Elizabeth, I want to go to you now. So your installation that we can see right here on the far top left, so those are representations of papel picado. And so you actually are from California, and you came, no one jumped, right? That was not a jump scare. She's from California. But how long have you been living in San Antonio?
I don't advertise that.
Oh, sorry, I should have mentioned that. Well, no, because I had a question about, like, you're from California, but then you came to San Antonio, and you made this piece that's so true to the city of San Antonio. So how did you, just being in the city, get this understanding of, this is San Antonio, and you created this papel picado piece?
Well, I've moved around my whole life, and I am a San Antonio transplant, but when you move around your whole life, like, I can't even list everywhere I've lived, you really appreciate everywhere you are and the unique characters and what makes places different. And then at the same time, how we're so alike. It was like Boston, Georgia, San Francisco, Arizona, Utah, that's what I remember right now. Indiana, that's my brother.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, sir.
So what was the question?
Just like how you came to pick, or select papel picado as kind of your way of portraying what San Antonio is.
So my parents moved here when I went to college, and so I felt a little bit homeless. I would come visit them, and this culture was so unique to me. I previously had lived in San Antonio, actually like right above Haight Street in the 80s. So that was such a unique culture. And then when they moved here, it was the 90s, and we all know, if you've lived here a while, that things have vastly changed. And it was so Mexican influence. It was just like, it was such a small town vibe. And for someone that had never lived here, I mean, we were fascinated by the culture, and really just, I feel like, appreciate it in the way like a tourist would.
And so what are some of the animals that we see represented on the papel picado, and how did you come to choose those specifically?
Well, I knew this was a San Pedro Creek project, and so I just researched how it came to be, and I think the performance before was very interesting in that regard, that this was a city by the water, and through history. And yes, like, so every animal represented was definitely a from that area, the turtles, the certain fishes and the birds and, all that. So I wanted to be very San Pedro Creek, not just San Antonio.
Nice. And so you come from a graphic design background, and you created the design that we're seeing right here, the designs on these 4 metal pieces. And how much input did you have into the actual production and engineering of it? I know you mostly focused on the design, but were you there when they were working on it or when it was installed?
I was very happy being design only. It was a process with the fabrication, and I went back and forth with the fabricators on what was, technically feasible and what wasn't. So it was a great learning process. I'm very happy only doing design. I've done both. I've been in charge of fabrication and budgets and everything, but the San Pedro, they were amazing. The San Pedro Creek people that I was dealing with were 100% just so great to work with. They took care of most of the production.
So you've said before that you want this art to be inspirational to the youth and to the people who perhaps are maybe like going on a run through that area or bicycling through that area, cycling through that area. And so what do you want people to kind of take from this? And, what do you want people to get from this art?
Energy and excitement and a joie de vivre. I just want it to make people happy. Pop art is all about liking things, and that's what I want my art to be. I want it to invoke that emotion in people. So I think that's my main focus in my work.
So have you done this level or this size of public art before? Like, what's kind of your relationship with public art? What's your main focus when it comes to your own art? Do you do a little bit more private, or?
I do whatever comes my way. Work for hire. Working in advertising and design, I love just getting a paycheck. Love getting paid.
Yeah,
so,
that's real. Okay.
So, and I feel like graphic design, advertising, fine art, it all translates. I grew up in a postmodern world where, everything was appropriated, and I just have bounced back and forth between the two. So that's I just multidisciplinary. I happy doing all of it.
Yeah. Well, now I want to open it up to the audience. If you guys have any questions or comments for Elizabeth, you can step forward.
Hi, my name is Sandy. I see that you have shadows involved, of course, because of the cutouts. Did you design with that intent, and did they request your input as far as installing it based on how the sun is?
Well, that is something that happened as it was installed. The actual location changed when we were in the middle of the project. So I realized that those cutouts are do lend themselves to another way of having it seen, but no, that was not really part of it. Yeah.
And the colors, they're all yours?
Yes, it's the fabricator had a little bit of a limited color palette, but yes, I chose the colors to represent San Antonio vibe. Thank you. Hi.
I consider myself an avid cyclist. So if I'm cycling through, do you want me to keep going, and like, wow, that was beautiful, or do you want me to stop? I gotta check this out.
Yeah, good question. It is a little bit of a discovery. There's lots of hidden pieces, and I have a new piece coming up on St. Mary's, which is very similar, which, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, yes, you can't, it actually is like you can't see everything just cycling by. I hope they're pretty and a fast way of seeing them, but it also is a discovery process.
Does anyone else have a comment that they'd like to share before we continue? All right, so Leticia, I actually want to talk. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I didn't mean to be so loud. I want to talk to you now. So you dabble in a lot of mediums. So you do all sorts of art. But your piece, which we can see right there, it's very beautiful. What about those smaller tiles is so great at capturing a story?
Well, I tend to work really large, and so this was very different from what I've been doing lately. I had been working on large-scale sculptures that were also based on wildflowers, native species here, and so. But when I was selected for this project, it took me back to the studio, sort of in a more personal manner, because I kind of gave up my studio work many years ago because I was working on so many public art projects that I couldn't do both. It was just impossible. So this was a really nice change to how I have been working, and to just be in the studio by myself and just working on these paintings, because the paintings are actually a lot larger than the tiles. And so to me, it was a very sort of personal project. I love community involvement as well, and I do that in almost all of my projects. But this one, I knew what I wanted to do. I went out when they had the opening to the first section, and I knew that I had the project, so I was going around photographing all of the flowers that were blooming at that time along the creek, but also in other areas around there. And because I had already been working with these flowers for the large-scale sculptures, I decided on these because these were the ones that I guess spoke to me, but it also had to do with color. I wanted to have a variety of color in each of these paintings, and how they paired up with an insect, with a butterfly or a caterpillar that's on one of them. And so it was a very different project for me, and it was one that was very satisfying because it took me back into the studio where all of those materials that I mentioned were really from my time when I was working in the studio and I was doing mixed media, and also when I was studying, when I was in school, and I used all of those things that in the end, I got a BFA at UTSA in painting and then an MFA. Yay! And then my MFA is also in painting. But as soon as I graduated, I started working with all of these different materials, really because I started doing public art. And the opportunity to work with a different material every time I did a project was also seeping into my own work. And that's why, I mixed so much of that together. But here, I got to go back to painting, which is, where I started, and it was, really satisfying. Was that your question? No.
I kind of forgot also. So, but I really love how, if you look close enough, I don't know if you guys have updated your glasses prescription, but if you look close enough, you can see that every little tile, every flower has like a butterfly or like a little insect, like you said, a caterpillar. And why was it important to add this? Because you could have easily just done like the flower on its own. But to me, just having that there, it's like the cycle of, I'm just making stuff up, but it's like the cycle of life, and it's hopeful. It's, it's nature. But why include it in each one?
Because I feel more and more, I've always been interested in ecology, but I was so busy, working and now that I'm slowing down because I'm getting older, and I was actually getting ready to retire, not from being an artist, because you never do that, but maybe from doing public art. But I keep seeing these projects and going, one more. And so, but it's given me time to slow down and go back to these things that were of interest to me and are of interest, I think, to everybody, in that we have to preserve these plants and these insects because they're important to our survival. And I'm so much more aware of my garden and how things just grow out there, and how, the monarchs come through and other insects and bugs that I never really noticed because I was always rushing around. And I can just sit there now and just observe this. And so that interconnection between the two is so important that I felt that in these paintings I had to, show that. And so that's the reason that, because I want to talk about the whole story, not just, oh, this is a pretty flower. It's about what the flower represents and what it does for us. And so it looks like a pretty tile design, but and hopefully it is, but I wanted to say more than just that. And so that's why.
Well, you've shared before that as a Latina, it isn't always easy being an artist and finding your path. But art for you has served as a way to analyze your troubles and ask these big questions about life and just about purpose, stuff like that. So did working on this art for public consumption still fulfill that purpose of you're still thinking about your own life and your own troubles, stuff like that?
Well, I think, things have gotten so much better.
In your life?
At least, well, not in my life so much, but I'm talking about...
I should have asked, I hope.
Well, but in that statement about being a Latina artist, I remember back when I was right out of UTSA back in 91? No, 85. And 91 was my MFA. And coming out and as a studio artist, trying to get into a gallery, trying to get into shows, things were kind of segregated, even here in San Antonio. Then we moved to Dallas, and it was even worse up there, and Fort Worth. And I remember, but I always felt like, damn it, I'm going to do this anyway. I'm sorry.
I think we can.
And so I was the only Latina at SMU, really, in the art department. And when I graduated, I forced myself to try out for galleries where there was no representation. And I joined the Women's Caucus, and I was the only Latina there. And they just say, oh, you're the little Latin girl, that kind of stuff. And so that was tough. And I loved coming back home because I would see us represented on the news. You did not see that in Dallas or in Fort Worth. And you see it a little bit more now, but it was such a world of difference between the two cities. And so I guess, that was part of the personal struggle, but also it really makes me, I guess, happy and proud that things have changed and are changing still. And that San Antonio is kind of a place where that happens a lot. And it's so inclusive. in many ways. And it was not that way when I was in my 20s. So, I mean, that we all have personal struggles, and my artwork when I was doing studio work had a lot to do with that. So my work was very dark and depressing. So I had a really hard time selling it, and so
I would have bought it.
And so public art, in a way, was a lifesaver because then I could make a living, and it still satisfied that need to create and to collaborate. And so it was an easy sort of step for me, where I know that it's very difficult for some artists because you feel like you're losing a part of yourself when you do public art, that you're giving in, that you're selling out. But I see it as a way to bring art to the community because, people that walk by the creek and see our work might not be the same people that would go to the museum to see work. And so I think that we are serving the community by doing that, bringing the work to them. And so I'm very proud of that and happy to be a part of that. And so I think that in that way, yeah, things have gotten a whole lot better. I'm not sitting in my studio making these depressing pieces that nobody wants anyway. I mean, they satisfy me, but, you can't make a living doing that. And so yeah, I'm very happy. Some of my friends that don't do public art, they do call me a sellout, and well, you're not really an artist, you're a public artist. And and that hurts, but I don't agree with that. I mean, when I see all the work that's done and how it affects the community, I think that it's not the same type of work, but sometimes it is, and just because it's out there in the world, I don't think that means that it's any less of a work that's in a gallery.
Yeah, you said that really beautifully. Can we just take a moment to appreciate all these artists and the work that they do? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Belinda, and I'm the chair of the Bexar County Historical Commission, and I would like to say thank you. I would like to say thank you because there's a lot of children in Bexar County who will not go into a museum because it's intimidating. They will not go into a gallery. They won't see those things. So what you are doing and what you've done is a gift to the children of Bexar County. Yes. Don't ever diminish what you do, because that creativity and what you are offering, what you are all offering, is something that some people are not going to feel comfortable doing unless it's out in the open and they can come and play, where the children can come and play with what you have produced. So I thank you.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yes, hi, my name is Marcus, and
Hi, Marcus.
I'd like to back off of what she said. I was born and raised in south side of San Antonio, and my dad would take me to the matinee. He would take me to the Whitty, and well, the matinee in particular, and he would look at a painting and says, "You could do that," because I really enjoyed, drawing when I was, remember, at 3 years old, and so he really encouraged me. My kindergarten teacher encouraged him, so every paycheck he would buy me art supplies up until I was the age of 18. I went to Parsons School of Design for fashion illustration design, and it's really ironic because here is a guy who does the windows for Julian Gold, and I was the first visual director back in the 80s and 90s, and I met Mrs. Gold. And before that, I used to work at Frost Brothers, and I knew Mrs. Matthews, who was the part of the family-owned, Frost Brothers. And she was very influential in this community because she brought in the Eurocentric look of fashion with Yves Saint Laurent, Yves Givenchy, blah, 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 blah. And then when I worked with Mrs., she was really eccentric. And she encouraged us to be very surreal with our visuals and Frost Brothers, and it was international, the company, Frost Brothers. Well, when I started working at Mrs. Gold, at Julian Gold, they were always in the shadow of the Frost Brothers. And the reason why I bring this up is because, it's just really ironic that I really had a really strong influence in the fashion here. Is a guy from the South Side. So this city has always been very inclusive. And, we do see surfacely here that there is segregation, blah, blah, blah. But San Antonio is very unique with the broad spectrum of Texas in that we've always been very, very conscientious of who we are and our identity, but yet our diversity. And I think that we all really want to preserve each other's culture. And I think it's really great that all of you here have really gone out of your way to do that. So just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Very beautiful.
Maestra Huerta, I wanted to thank you so much for taking those spaces and putting yourself in positions where maybe you didn't feel seen, heard, secure, to make opportunities for my generation. And I wanted to ask you, after you did all of that work where you, I don't like the word compromise, but you did work in public spaces for representation. As a chingona, you sacrificed a little bit of your creativity to create public space for other chingonas. And I would like to know, if we gave you all the money in the world, all the opportunity in the world, what medium and what content would you want to create with and within?
Oh. Thank you.
Well, I don't know. I think that I'm very open to any medium because I feel that public art is always an opportunity to learn something new. And I've always felt that each project that I did offered that opportunity to learn something. And even now, when I thought, well, I'm pretty much done, I started doing the Bloom series for Public Arts San Antonio here, and it was something I had never done before. So I think I would just want it to be something that challenges me, and that is so different and so brand new. In a way, these tiles were that, because I hadn't done something like this in such a long time, and it was a learning opportunity for me to go back and do that. So just to continue learning until the day I die, I think is what I want to do.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming to the mic and sharing why public art is so important. And I want to talk next to you, Ricky, about your canopy that we can see right up there in the top center. Very beautiful. And so you're actually used to working in these quiet, small spaces. And so what was it like to work on such a big canopy? And you worked on the design of it, but how is that different from like illustrating something on your couch or on a sketch pad?
Yeah. It was completely different when I saw it completed. I think when I was accepted to do this, I got to sketch on my couch the design, and then I, went through the process of picking the colors and things like that. But the engineers and everyone else created it and actually made it happen and invited me to see it. And that when you walk up to it, it's huge. And they sent like photographs of the like samples of what it would look like. But when I saw it in person, my jaw dropped. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. It was a way I do usually work very small and quiet. And it was a way to go big. And the River Authority, the city just gave me that chance. I'm really thankful for it. It's quite a piece. So.
Well, at the start of this event, we all heard John Philip Santos and his poetry, and very beautiful. And I think the music just enriched it completely. But how did you actually found inspiration from his poems that he wrote about the creek. Could you talk more about that and how it sort of made its way into your design?
Yeah. My artwork, all of my artwork, I'm inspired by words, by the written word. Some people find inspiration in music or nature, and I like to read and find words that jump out, things that give me, visual inspiration. It could be like old-timey one-liners, things like that. I do love to find inspiration in poetry. And when I was researching the creek, I read A Creek Tells Its Story by John Philip Santos. And as you guys saw, what a treat his words, his voice, just being able to be here. I was so thankful. I've never met him, and I think he's over there. He was.
Oh, they're just over there.
Yeah.
Let's just keep motioning that way.
Yeah, and when you hear his words, his poetry, you see it, you feel it. You're inspired. And so the actual inspiration, I did learn that the heron was a symbol for the Aztecs. It was symbolized home or the origin story. And so I immediately wanted to draw that. And then I researched what birds, like Elizabeth, I researched exactly which ones were on the San Pedro Creek, and also the origin of the creek also not only involves the herons or the wildlife, but the important structures around the creek. And when I went to scout the location, I looked around, and at that point it was just nothing was there. They haven't built anything yet. But right across the creek, I could see the top of Ruby City. And it just right there, and it looked like a bird in flight. And so there are actual, just really kind of crude designs of the roof of Ruby City in the canopy. And you can, I don't know if that, I guess there's actually a little platform at the canopy that you can stand up on, and you can see that exact drawing of the place. But yeah, so yeah, John Philip Santos providing the inspiration there. So thankful.
So what was the process of looking for the shade material? Was that just not that exciting? I'm interested. And have you worked with that kind of material before?
No. I mean, it was such a large scale. I mean, I've screen printed before, things like that, but I didn't have to. I think, like Elizabeth said, you had a certain color palette that you got to choose from. They had a company that had, the screens, and basically they just sent me samples. Mm-hmm. And they told me, this is what it's going to be made of. And then I had a bunch of colors, but I stuck to my just original colors that I use in my work. And that's why it is. But yeah. And what's really cool is that material is heavy duty. It's supposed to last like 10 years.
What happens after those 10 years are up and when it gets worn down?
That's actually one of the coolest parts. So after mine wears out, there will be another call for art, and it'll be a new artist, which is so cool because the water, the renewal that he spoke about in his poetry, that's refreshing. And that's going to be a new artist there for 10 years after that. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to open it up to the audience now. If you guys have any questions for Rikki about her canopy, her art. Why are we?
That's my
I'm her
daughter.
Oh, that's right.
My name is Mia. I'm up here to just kind of have a proud daughter moment. I've been able to experience this with her in a way, being really proud and seeing her go through the process of it, and it's been really fun. My high school even took a field trip and visited all of that. We did an art walk, and we saw all of your pieces, and it was great. It was fun seeing like my whole class line up on the platform that you can visit and see the shape of Ruby City. So yeah, that was really cool. If you're an avid cyclist, I would recommend that you maybe take a water break and sit, because it's definitely a cute little picnic spot, because that's what we did. But yeah, that would be a good idea. But I love all of the pieces. I think that they're great, and it's a great way to honor San Antonio and the creek and everything. And so yeah, I love you, Mom.
Thank you so much.
Congrats, Mia, getting into UT.
What, sorry?
Does that work? Congrats getting into UT, Mia.
Oh, yeah, congrats.
Maybe you'll be the next artist in 10 years.
There you go.
Oh.
Hey, y'all. How's it going? So I think one of the unique, this is for any of y'all, by the way, one of the unique things about public art, that process, is that it's a collaborative process. I find that interesting. So I was wondering if you think it's important, to talk a little bit about that process of reaching out to the community, what that looks like, and if there's any strategies that y'all use to try to ensure that you represent diverse voices within the community, that they come to the table and you hear from them in that process. What does that look like?
Thank you so much.
I think, I know Diana, I think for me, reaching out to the community, social media is a big way to reach out. I love when people just make comments and messages, or just relate to the work. And like you said, I think you were saying TikTok, like one of your younger students. I was a fan of, I guess, just really enjoying Diana's videos on her Instagram where her hands are in the wet clay. And it's amazing. And then she told me that you have a younger student that does that for you.
You have to have someone 17 to do a TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. But reaching out in that sense, you reach out in that way. That's the most accessible, quick way.
Well, and I think this is a good opportunity to shout out to, public art doesn't happen without public art administrators. Mm-hmm. And so every organization generally has someone that's hired to coordinate everything and to arrange a lot of community meetings. So a lot of the organizations that commission us pay or have a good infrastructure in place to reach out to stakeholders and get that input and have meetings scheduled and coordinate with the artists to come. And so then a lot of times we come to those events that have already been organized for us. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes, and we kind of get the glory. I always, a lot of infrastructure projects, I go to a bunch of meetings with a bunch of construction people and engineers and the public art administrators and then all that, and then it's always my bridge. But, so many people worked on this thing to make it successful. So, we get all the glory because it's shiny eye candy, but there's a lot of hard work that goes into all public art projects behind the scenes for that. And so the last thing I want to say is the most important thing I think an artist can do at a community meeting is listen and just not have any preformed ideas, but to really hear what it is stakeholders want out of the artwork they want in that place. And then go back to your studio and use your talents and experience to respond to that.
Shout out to the River Authority.
Yeah,
definitely.
shout out to the San Antonio River Authority who even made this possible. Can we clap again for them? Well, I think this brings us to the conclusion of this event today, and I just want to say, I know I'm just blown away by you guys and your talent, and I will never look at these pieces the same again. I think we're all leaving here with a grand appreciation for what this really means. And now we've met the people behind it. And I just think that's incredible. Like, we're in a community. This is beautiful. And so just thank you guys so much for, doing this and for talking to us, for giving us a piece of your heart. It means a lot.